Bonjour. Bonjour et bienvenue. Alors, je me présente, je suis Sylvie Belleville, je suis directrice scientifique du Centre de recherche de l'Institut universitaire de gériatrie de Montréal. C'est un plaisir pour moi d'introduire nos invités de marque qui vont ouvrir notre journée scientifique annuelle. C'est un événement important pour notre communauté. C'est un événement qui se place sous le signe de l'excellence. Comme centre de recherche, on est ici pour faire avancer les connaissances, aussi pour former et développer les talents. C'est aussi une journée qui se place sous le signe de l'engagement envers et avec la société et qui se place sous le signe du partage du savoir pour améliorer la pratique de ceux qui s'occupent des aînés au quotidien. Pour ouvrir cette journée, nous avons vraiment la chance et l'honneur de recevoir 3 femmes exceptionnelles qui jouent un rôle clé comme décideurs ou décideuses au niveau de la haute administration de la santé, au niveau du milieu académique et scientifique universitaire et au niveau du milieu politique. Toutes 3, et je le sais, toutes 3 portent le vieillissement dans leur sphère d'influence et dans leur sphère d'action, et c'est une grande chance pour nous et surtout pour notre société. Alors, je vais d'abord inviter Madame Marguerite Blais pour ouvrir cette journée scientifique. Juste un petit mot, je voulais vous indiquer que Madame Blais, malheureusement, va devoir partir rapidement parce qu'elle a des obligations ministérielles aujourd'hui. Donc, Madame, c'est vraiment un honneur pour moi d'inviter Madame Marguerite Blais, qui est députée de Prévost, Coalition Avenir Québec, et qui est aussi ministre responsable des aînés et des proches aidants.
Bonjour, je suis toujours heureuse, est-ce que vous m'entendez? Oui. Toujours heureuse de me retrouver dans cet amphithéâtre et surtout à l'Institut universitaire de gériatrie de Montréal. Écoutez, quand Mme Belzile mentionne que je quitte immédiatement après pour des obligations ministérielles, vous savez, on doit adopter un budget, puis pour moi, aujourd'hui, c'est ce qu'on appelle la période des crédits en commission parlementaire. Alors, je m'en vais soutenir le budget. C'est impératif que j'y sois. Je vais me faire bombarder de questions par les oppositions, mais je suis prête, inquiétez-vous pas. Je vais parler avec mon cœur. Et surtout, je crois fondamentalement que c'est impossible que les gouvernements précédents aient tort partout. Tout le monde essaie de mettre la main à la pâte pour améliorer les conditions de vie des aînés et des proches aidants. J'aimerais saluer la présidente du conseil d'administration, Mme Micheline Ulrich. Mme Ulrich, c'est une infirmière et c'est aussi une personne qui fait encore des visites pour Agrément Canada, qui est la présidente du conseil d'administration du CIUS Centre-Sud. Merci beaucoup, Mme Ulrich. Vous êtes un modèle de vieillissement actif et de personnes très engagées dans votre société. Mme Sonia Bélanger, qui est la PDG du CIUS Centre-Sud, avec laquelle j'aime beaucoup collaborer. On est en train de développer un projet et aussi avec toute son équipe et le docteur David Lucier, que je porte dans mon cœur depuis plusieurs années, qui est le directeur général d'Avantage ici à l'Institut universitaire. On va faire de la gériatrie sociale. Alors, on va développer un projet dans le Centre-Sud pour briser l'isolement social de nos aînés. C'est l'une des raisons pour laquelle je suis revenue en politique. Pour moi, la politique, c'est pas quelque chose qui m'importe tant que ça. Ce qui m'importe, c'est le canal qui permet de déposer des politiques nationales, de déposer des lois, d'essayer de faire des changements culturels, organisationnels. Et j'étais déjà à la retraite, puis j'aime pas le mot retraite, on se retire d'un travail, mais pas nécessairement de la vie. J'écrivais et mon dernier livre portait sur la proche aidance. Et j'ai posé la question dans le dernier chapitre, si un parti politique voulait s'engager à déposer une politique nationale sur les proches aidants, ben, je serais prête à revenir, et puis je suis revenue. Et cette politique sera déposée à la fin de l'année 2020 et le plan d'action qui va suivre au printemps 2020, parce que la politique, c'est en 2019, avec évidemment des sommes d'argent. On l'a déjà là, dans le budget, un montant de 21 millions. Vous savez que j'avais mis en place les appuis aux proches aidants avec 200 millions de dollars. Et là, ben, écoutez, il y a cette volonté-là de faire une politique des proches aidants, pas seulement pour les personnes aînées, mais aussi pour tous les proches aidants. Et on est face à une situation nouvelle dans notre société. Il y a des parents vieillissants qui ont des enfants adultes assez âgés qui sont en situation de handicap. Et ces parents-là sont extrêmement inquiets. Alors, il faut trouver ensemble des solutions pour être en mesure de soulager les proches aidants à la fois de ces parents vieillissants qui ont parfois 82, 83 ans, pris avec des enfants trisomiques très âgés, alors que les enfants décédaient à 21 ans. Aujourd'hui, l'espérance de vie est de 65 ans. Alors, on a du travail à faire dans ce domaine. Aujourd'hui, vous allez parler de deux sujets importants, soit les soins, le continuum de soins. Et il faut changer aussi nos perspectives, notre culture organisationnelle au niveau des soins. Il faut arrêter de les voir en silos. Il faut cesser aussi de développer que des places en privé. Il faut qu'on se responsabilise en tant que société. Il faut que le public reprenne le dessus pour faire en sorte que, au-delà des sommes d'argent que ça peut coûter, par exemple, en ressources intermédiaires à 40 000 $ versus une place en CHSLD, il faut toujours penser à la personne qui a besoin de soins et de services de qualité, nonobstant l'endroit où la personne se retrouve. Et vous avez sans doute entendu parler, moi j'aurais besoin un peu d'eau, s'il vous plaît. Oui, c'est ça. De l'eau. Vous avez sans doute entendu parler des maisons des aînés qu'on veut faire. Les maisons des aînés, on s'imagine que c'est de la brique, que c'est du broc. C'est une philosophie, c'est un concept. C'est être en mesure de prendre la personne qui est en perte d'autonomie modérée, de pouvoir la garder jusqu'à la fin de sa vie. Qu'on arrête de mettre en place des milieux de fin de vie et qu'on puisse mettre des milieux de vie jusqu'à la fin de la vie. Qu'on change aussi nos façons d'accompagner nos personnes. On le sait, quand les gens sont rendus en CHSLD, on ne peut pas les soigner. Mais est-ce qu'on peut leur offrir les meilleurs soins, des soins de qualité? Est-ce qu'on peut aussi accompagner les familles? Est-ce qu'on peut créer des milieux dans la communauté? Est-ce qu'on peut inviter les enfants à entrer dans ces milieux? Est-ce qu'il peut y avoir de belles fenestrations? On veut diminuer les antipsychotiques. Ça veut donc dire qu'il va falloir qu'il y ait beaucoup d'îlots occupationnels pour faire en sorte que ces personnes soient occupées. Moi, là, la médication, là, quand on donne trop de médicaments à des personnes qui sont en fin de vie, pour des raisons comme le cholestérol, ben je ne le sais pas, là, je me pose des questions. Moi, je ne suis pas médecin, je ne suis pas pharmacien, mais je me pose des questions. Quand une personne en CHSLD, parce que j'en visite beaucoup, puis je fais des visites surprises, me dit « on voulait m'envoyer passer une mammographie », ben je me pose des questions. Je pense qu'à un moment donné, il faut accompagner les gens, c'est ça le continuum de soins, pour faire en sorte que les gens aient une belle qualité de vie jusqu'à la fin de leur vie. Puis vous allez parler aussi aujourd'hui de stimuler la plasticité adaptative du cerveau. Écoutez, on a beaucoup de chercheurs ici. Je vois M. Yves Joannette qui a créé ce centre de recherche et qui est tellement content de voir qu'aujourd'hui, le petit bébé est rendu adulte et qu'il se passe de très grandes choses. Entre autres, vous êtes champion au niveau de la prévention des maladies, des accidents cardiovasculaires. Il faut travailler davantage aussi sur tout ce qui touche la maladie d'Alzheimer et les maladies apparentées. Dans les CHSLD actuellement, c'est entre 70 et 80% des personnes qui sont atteintes de maladies d'Alzheimer. C'est la raison pour laquelle prochainement on va annoncer un 5 millions pour cette année pour la recherche sur la maladie d'Alzheimer, pour continuer. Mais je pourrais vous parler longtemps, je suis une passionnée, j'aime ce que je fais profondément et je suis là pour changer les choses. Je ne peux pas le faire seule. Je peux seulement le faire avec vous. J'ai besoin de chercheurs. Je viens aussi du milieu de la recherche. J'ai besoin de chercheurs. J'ai besoin de personnes sur le terrain. Vous devez me transmettre vos connaissances. Vous devez me transmettre le fruit de vos recherches pour être en mesure de jumeler avec les politiques publiques, ce qu'on fait. Parce que faire une politique qui ne coïncide pas avec la réalité, on est mieux de ne pas en faire des politiques. Alors, on va faire des politiques avec vous, pour les gens que vous aimez, que vous accompagnez, parce que quand on est chercheur, quand on est clinicien, quand on travaille dans le milieu de la santé, c'est parce qu'on est des passionnés, c'est parce qu'on veut, à quelque part, accompagner les gens pour que ces gens-là soient heureux le plus possible. Et l'une des raisons pour laquelle on va développer la gériatrie sociale, ben c'est justement pour aller rejoindre les personnes qu'on n'est pas capable de rejoindre. On va commencer par le centre-sud de Montréal. On le sait que dans le centre-sud, là, il y a une très grande détresse psychologique. Et quand on souffre d'isolement, le taux de mortalité, le taux de morbidité, le taux d'alcoolisme, le taux de tabagisme, tout ça augmente. Alors, on va essayer ensemble, avec les communautés, avec les groupes communautaires, de briser cet isolement. Alors, vous voyez bien que je n'ai pas lu mes notes. Je fais comme d'habitude. Mon équipe est très frustrée de travailler avec moi parce qu'ils travaillent fort pour m'écrire des statistiques, pour me dire quoi dire, mais je les écoute pas. Alors, je vous souhaite un très, très beau, est-ce qu'on appelle ça un congrès, un forum scientifique, une rencontre scientifique. Je vous la souhaite belle. Merci à tous les chercheurs qui vont parler aujourd'hui et merci pour le travail que vous faites. Vous êtes des personnes dévouées et je vous admire infiniment. Merci.
Merci, Madame Blais. Maintenant, j'aurai l'honneur et le plaisir d'accueillir Madame Sonia Bélanger, qui est présidente directrice générale du Centre intégré universitaire de santé et de services sociaux du Centre-Sud de l'île de Montréal.
Alors, mesdames et messieurs, Madame la ministre Blais, merci d'être là. Madame Micheline Ulrich, présidente du conseil d'administration, Madame Marie-Josée Hébert, vice-rectrice à la recherche, à la découverte et à la création et à l'innovation à l'Université de Montréal, Sylvie Belleville, qui est notre directrice scientifique, Annie Kim Gilbert, directrice de l'enseignement. Je nomme beaucoup de monde, mais je pense que c'est quand même important de nommer tout le monde. Monsieur Pierre Rainville, directeur associé aux affaires scientifiques du CRIUGM, Dr. Kenneth Rockwood, professeur à l'Université de Dalhousie, en Nouvelle-Écosse, et Dr. Marcus Meizner, professeur associé à l'Université de Queensland, en Australie. Monsieur Joannette aussi, que j'ai croisé tantôt, employé, médecin, chercheur, étudiant, bienvenue à cette belle rencontre scientifique. Je pense que c'est important que ces rencontres aient lieu sur une base régulière pour s'assurer de faire avancer ensemble la science, les connaissances, puis surtout, ce qui me tient le plus à cœur, le transfert des connaissances dans notre milieu, pour qu'on puisse réellement améliorer notre offre de services en santé et services sociaux au sein de l'Institut de gériatrie notamment, au sein du CIUS Centre-Sud, mais aussi comme société par rapport au phénomène du vieillissement. Il y a environ 4 ans, ça fait déjà 4 ans que notre établissement existe, et puis une des premières activités que j'avais faites, c'était ici même à l'Institut de gériatrie. J'étais venue assister à une première conférence. Puis à ce moment-là, je me souviens que l'Institut de gériatrie de Montréal, les intervenants, les médecins, avaient beaucoup de suspicions par rapport à la réorganisation du réseau de la santé et des services sociaux, et je pouvais les comprendre. Mais je pense qu'aujourd'hui, on voit que l'Institut de gériatrie est un bijou pour le CIUS du Centre-Sud, et c'est vraiment extraordinaire tout ce qui est fait ici comme travail, en collaboration aussi intersectorielle avec les chercheurs qui viennent de différents autres établissements, d'autres forums. Et je pense que la gériatrie, dans le fond, c'est une façon pour nous de nous aider à améliorer les soins et services dans l'ensemble de notre établissement. Donc, pas seulement en lien avec la gériatrie comme telle, mais aussi en lien avec notre offre de services en soutien à domicile, à l'hôpital, dans tous les secteurs de soins et services. Alors, c'est extraordinaire. Je pense qu'il faut voir que pour nous, l'Institut, c'est important. Ce matin, j'ai eu le privilège de rencontrer la ministre Bier. J'étais accompagnée de la présidente de notre conseil d'administration. Madame Bier soutient nos actions, et je pense que tantôt, elle a mentionné qu'elle souhaitait qu'on développe et qu'on aille de l'avant. Puis elle nous a dit très rapidement, alors j'ai retenu ça aussi, le volet de la gériatrie sociale. Donc, on a un projet extraordinaire. Je pense qu'elle pourra en faire une annonce éventuellement. Mais on est en train d'écrire tout ça. On travaille ça avec Dr. Lucier, mais aussi avec les acteurs de notre communauté. Donc, c'est pas juste avec l'Institut de gériatrie, mais aussi avec le volet communautaire, avec les arrondissements. Et on veut donc expérimenter dans un quartier bienveillant pour ces aînés, naturellement en misant sur la prévention de la maladie, mais la promotion de la santé, le repérage des clientèles qui sont souvent dans des situations vulnérables. Alors donc, aujourd'hui, 2 belles thématiques, la plasticité du cerveau, parce que le titre a disparu, mais le continuum de soins. Alors, bienvenue à tous. Merci beaucoup d'être là.
Merci, Madame Bélanger. Maintenant, j'ai le plaisir d'accueillir Madame Marie-Josée Bier, qui est vice-rectrice à la recherche, à la découverte, à la création et à l'innovation de l'Université de Montréal.
Merci beaucoup, Sylvie. C'est un plaisir d'être ici. Madame la PDG, chers conférenciers invités et chers collègues, c'est un plaisir, comme je le mentionnais, parce que, à mon avis, c'est une journée importante aujourd'hui, la journée de la scientifique du Centre de recherche de l'Institut universitaire de gériatrie. C'est une journée importante parce que ça revêt une manière de faire la science, de s'assurer qu'elle a de l'impact, qu'elle change les choses et que nous en bénéficions tous collectivement, que nous en bénéficions parce que nous collaborons, mais que nous collaborons en sortant des sentiers battus et que nous continuons à faire ce que vous avez déjà commencé à faire depuis maintenant des décennies. Et donc, le premier message, c'est de vous dire que l'Université de Montréal est particulièrement fière de ce qui a été accompli ici, que nous sommes tous des membres de la grande famille de l'Université de Montréal et que si nous voulons continuer à travailler ensemble dans cette vision de pertinence et d'impact rehaussé, mais il y a un intérêt particulier pour que nous continuions à le faire d'une manière qui est tout à fait tissée, serrée, non seulement dans le monde universitaire et de la santé, mais en lien avec le monde communautaire. Parce que c'est notre responsabilité que les connaissances que nous générons, que vous générez, que ces connaissances-là ne restent pas dans vos laboratoires, mais qu'ils s'incarnent dans la vie des familles, des patients, dans l'amélioration de la société. Et on sait que dans le domaine du vieillissement, on a un stimulus à travailler ensemble, à travailler mieux, à travailler bien, à travailler d'une manière qui est indisciplinaire. On a un stimulus à le faire parce que les défis sont importants. Ils sont importants et ils sont dans un contexte de rupture et d'amplification accélérée par différents facteurs. Que l'on pense aux inégalités face à la maladie et à l'accès aux ressources, qu'on pense au recul parfois de la solidarité sociale, à l'équilibre précaire des mesures sociales, et ainsi de suite. Donc, il ne suffit pas de changer d'allure et de continuer à faire un petit peu plus ce que l'on faisait bien. Il faut maintenant se dire qu'on doit passer en vitesse accélérée, mais qu'on doit le faire collectivement ensemble. Et il faut être capable de s'interroger sur le futur un petit peu plus lointain, parce que la vieillesse d'aujourd'hui et la vieillesse de demain, et d'après-demain, et dans quelques décennies, elle pourrait être fort différente de la réalité de 2019. Et donc, de prendre la mesure du défi actuel qu'il représente et de se dire qu'on va l'aborder collectivement dans des visions audacieuses. Et j'aimerais prendre du temps pour vous parler de 3 projets. Et puis, je vais même me permettre de sortir de, oui, Marie-Jeanne Kergost. Marie-Jeanne, bonjour Marie-Jeanne. Je vais sortir de mon script à cause de toi pour vous parler d'un élément de rupture qui est absolument transversal, mais qui va toucher l'ensemble de nos vies, du milieu de la recherche, du milieu de l'apprentissage. Et donc, vous êtes probablement au courant que du côté de l'Université de Montréal, on a mis en place des grands projets interdisciplinaires, interfacultaires, que l'on veut voir se déployer, pas juste au sein de l'université, mais avec nos membres de notre réseau, alors nos CHU, nos CIUS, et on veut que ceci s'incarne dans la réalité de Montréal, mais avec une vision où les avancées que l'on va faire ici devraient être répandues de par le monde de manière positive. Et un de ces projets-là, il s'appelle bien humblement « La vie repensée ». Et c'est se donner la capacité de repenser la vie, comment on voit la vie, et de l'aborder dans l'ensemble du cycle, du tout début jusqu'à la toute fin, en la voyant d'une manière qui est positive et en s'assurant que nos chercheurs qui sont fantastiques dans le domaine de la neuroscience, neurocognition, développement, réadaptation et vieillissement, ils travaillent tous ensemble. Et donc, on a réussi, je dois dire merci à Julie Carrier, qui va être une de vos conférencières, à avoir une planification stratégique de l'ensemble du réseau, pas juste de l'Université de Montréal, de l'ensemble du réseau, qui passe de l'UGM à l'OCIUS de nord de l'île, de l'est de l'île, et avoir une vision globale de tout ce que l'on peut faire ensemble et apprendre les uns des autres. Quelques exemples. Un projet qu'on met de l'avant et qui incarne le leadership à la fois en neurosciences cognitives et en intelligence artificielle, c'est le Centre interdisciplinaire de recherche sur les cerveaux et l'apprentissage et le UGM est une partie prenante de ça. Un regroupement de 60 chercheurs un peu partout, mais qui va nous permettre de créer ces liens-là. Un autre regroupement où de vos chercheurs sont ici toujours dans le domaine de l'IA et des neurosciences, c'est le regroupement unique. 45 chercheurs de 7 universités québécoises, 4 grandes initiatives de recherche apogées réunies ensemble. Le leadership, il vient de chez nous. Et le leadership fort, c'est un leadership collaborateur qui va nous mener plus loin dans les années qui viennent. Un autre exemple, et auquel j'aimerais que vous portiez un petit peu attention, parce que j'ai moi-même une certaine inquiétude que nous ayons une certaine nonchalance autour des technologies de rupture dans le domaine de la science des données et de l'IA dans le domaine de la santé. Nous devons collectivement nous responsabiliser autour des changements qui sont à nos portes, incluant dans le domaine maintien à domicile, incluant dans le domaine du vieillissement. Qu'est-ce que les technologies de l'intelligence artificielle vont apporter dans le domaine de la santé? C'est un grand chapitre qui s'ouvre, qui s'est ouvert ici à l'Université de Montréal, puisque c'est à cause de liens étroits de collaboration entre nos chercheurs en informatique et nos chercheurs en neurosciences que l'apprentissage profond a vu le jour. Et c'est à nous, collectivement, de se dire que nous avons la responsabilité que ces innovations se déploient avec nos valeurs d'équité, de justice. Alors, je vous demande d'aller faire un tour sur le web et d'aller lire la Déclaration de Montréal pour l'IA responsable. je vous demande de réfléchir à ces principes qui devraient au moins faire partie d'une boîte à outils que nous avons développée suite à une réflexion scientifique, mais aussi à un travail de co-construction avec le public. Et je vous suggère de l'utiliser dans vos délibérations. Alors, vous faites Google, Montréal IA responsable. You can just type Google Montreal Responsible AI, lisez-le, puis si ça vous intéresse, signez-le. Mais comme me disait Marie-Jeanne, on n'a pas le droit de ne pas... C'est une fois qu'on est conscient qu'il y a un enjeu. On n'a pas le droit de ne pas se responsabiliser. Et on est tous collectivement responsables que les développements aient un impact, mais un impact positif pour la société. Et c'est d'autant plus important quand ceci touche des populations vulnérables, comme les personnes âgées, comme les proches aidants et leurs familles. Alors, s'il y a un centre de recherche qui est bien placé pour poser ces questions-là, contribuer d'une manière qui est audacieuse, qui est scientifiquement exemplaire, c'est l'UGM. Et c'est l'UGM qui, au Québec, se trouve au premier rang de la recherche sur le vieillissement, mais qui a toujours été impliqué dans la découverte de solutions nouvelles et de leur transfert. Un volet de la vocation de ce comité aviseur pour la recherche clinique l'illustre bien. Et donc, c'est avec ces réflexions en tête que je vous remercie de m'avoir invité, que je vous souhaite de bons échanges et que j'ai la certitude qu'il va en ressortir des idées qui sont brillantes et qui auront un impact positif pour l'ensemble d'entre nous. Merci beaucoup.
J'aimerais remercier sincèrement nos trois invités de marque pour des allocutions vraiment inspirantes et c'est un grand honneur pour nous de vous avoir accueillis ici ce matin. Alors, on va continuer avec la partie scientifique de notre journée et pour ça, je vais inviter Mylène Aubertin-Leheutre, qui est co-responsable de l'axe 2 de notre centre de recherche, qui va présenter brièvement Dr. Kenneth Rockwood, qui est notre premier invité international.
Donc, bonjour tout le monde. Avant de présenter notre prochain conférencier invité, je voudrais juste vous rappeler le thème de notre journée scientifique. Elle se veut éco-responsable et écologique, donc beaucoup de choses sont compostables, telles vos tasses et vos assiettes, et nous vous demandons de bien utiliser les bacs de recyclage. Maintenant que j'ai fait ma mission éco-responsabilité pour la planète, je vais avoir l'honneur, et je me trouve même très privilégiée, d'avoir comme invité aujourd'hui Dr. Rockwood, qui est un éminent chercheur au niveau international, qui est le fondateur du Rockwood Frailty Index, qui est celui qui est le plus connu en termes d'utilisation dans la gériatrie dans le domaine de la fragilité. Donc Dr. Rockwood est un Canadien né en Terre-Neuve, excusez-moi, je cherchais le mot en anglais, mais bien en français. Il est né à Terre-Neuve, il est actuellement en Nouvelle-Écosse, dans l'université d'Alderson. Il a publié plus de 450 articles à ce jour. Il collabore d'un point de vue international, et si vous voulez le suivre sur Twitter, il émet beaucoup d'idées intéressantes et de débats que je trouve toujours agréables à suivre. Il est aussi professeur de médecine à l'université d'Alderson. Il est un physicien encore très actif, il n'est pas juste un chercheur pensant, il agit aussi auprès du patient, il pense toujours aux patients au sein du centre de santé de Queen Elizabeth II. Et il a, en dehors de cet effet, il est aussi le directeur scientifique senior des soins aigus de la province de la Nouvelle-Écosse. Donc je suis très honorée d'accueillir et d'entendre aujourd'hui Dr. Kenneth Rockwood.
Bonjour. Bonjour tout le monde. Merci pour l'invitation et merci Mylène pour l'introduction. Veuillez m'excuser mes vêtements car je reviens de vacances en Floride. Pas de complet, pas de papillons, pas de wingtips. J'aimerais vous parler du sujet qui m'a passionné tout le long de ma carrière. la fragilité chez les personnes âgées. Ce matin, j'ai parlé avec le chauffeur de taxi. Il m'a dit que le vieillissement... Okay. Il m'a dit que le vieillissement, c'est bien simple. On commence comme un bébé et à la fin, c'est la même chose. Mais je pense que c'est un peu plus complexe que ça. Et pour parler de ça, il faut que je parle en anglais. Vous avez entendu que je suis Ténévien. Il faut aussi que je parle lentement and with a standard Canadian accent, and not like I was one Newfoundlander talking to another Newfoundlander. Because you crowd on the mainland have no idea what we're talking about with that. Now, let's get the slides sorted out here. We're a big part of the way through the talk already, apparently. I got it. Okay. Well, now you got it. There we go. Thank you. So the major clinical job I have these days is I work in the emergency department and I run the internal medicine consult service. And one of the things that we found is that whenever there is a geriatrician in charge of the internal medicine consult service, the flow through the hospital is a lot better. And I was interested in that. So what are we doing when we're in the emergency department that makes such a big difference? And it looks like this. About half of the consults that are made by the emergency department are made to the internal medicine service. And half of those are for people who are elderly. And 2/3 of those people are frail. So it has to be something that's happening with frail older people when they're acutely unwell. And it struck me that this is a big challenge that I hadn't really spent a lot of time thinking about. And it is something that we need to understand. It's much more complicated than thinking, well, someone is frail and now they're sick, and everything else will be the same net, some understanding of their frailty. There is an interaction which is very important, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. I have a disclosure. You've heard about the clinical frailty scale. I never call it the Rockwood frailty scale, but other people do. In England, it's used everywhere, and I was surprised to hear my name is turned into a verb, and people say, oh, we have to Rockwood that patient. And that's a bit disturbing. I also have a company I founded many years ago called DGI Clinical, and we work on outcome measurement, but I won't be talking about any of that today. I will talk about the clinical frailty scale a little bit. So I have 3 objectives. The first thing is, and I'm not checking my email, what I'm trying to do is put myself on a timer, because this is my favorite topic in the world, and if I don't put myself on a timer, I will go too long. So the 3 objectives are to review frailty and how it relates to aging, because some of the things the taxi driver said are approximately true, but some things are not, and it's the gap which is important. And then I want to talk a little bit about how acute illness influences frailty. And it's interesting that we don't know more about this, but we don't. And then I want to think about this in terms of information value. Currently in the world, we talk about frailty. There are these debates about words. Oh, is it frailty? Is it a syndrome? Is it a state? Is it resilience? Is it intrinsic capacity? And we've tried very much to have a quantitative understanding of what frailty is. And that's what I want to think about in terms of how we approach the issue now. I also want then to make the point that frailty assessment is not about administrative classification. It's about a care plan. And the way we have to think about the information about frailty is in a way that informs our care plan, because without that, it would be a semantic exercise. So the first objective then is how frailty relates to aging. I'm of the school which says that you should tell people what you're going to say, then say it, then tell them what you said. So what I'm going to say in this bit, frailty is both a statistical concept and a clinical one, and where they come together, it's very important, and it works like this. The older someone is, the more likely they are to die. This is non-controversial. The older a person is, the more likely on average they have accumulated health deficits. Some of these will be microscopic and some we'll be able to see. And the thing that I will argue to you is that the more health deficits a person has, the more likely they are to be frail. And that captures the statistical concept of frailty, which is variability in the risk of death, the way it was introduced, for people of the same age. Or it's now a more generalized concept with proportional hazard analysis to be the variability in the risk of the adverse outcome for people of the same degree of exposure. So what happens across the life course is we accumulate deficits. We have things wrong with us. And in fairness to the long time it's taken to try and understand this better, we don't all accumulate them in the same way, and even the deficits we do accumulate don't fit the same pattern. So I show you here on the top things like difficulty dressing, which is never really that common, and it accumulates sort of gradually across the life course. In contrast to high blood pressure, which starts to accelerate right from about the age of 20 or so until it hits a plateau somewhere around the age of 80, and it stays about the same. And then there are things like cataracts, which hardly happen at all, and after about the age of 65, they increase, and even at the age of 62, my age, you start to hear about who the good cataract surgeon is. You say, oh, I pay attention to that. That's important. But what's very intriguing about this is that, and this is work from the Howlett lab at Dalhousie University, it's the same with mice. Mice show similar patterns, not with dressing, but they show similar variability in patterns. They accumulate different things in different ways, and various mice will accumulate them at different rates. And so now I think we can understand this is truly science, if it happens in mice. So the way we try and bring this together is we take the number of things that a person has wrong with them, or a mouse has wrong with it, and divide by the number of things that were counted. So what do you mean by divide by the number of things that were counted? Well, always we work with a database. When we started with the Canadian Study of Health and Aging database. And in that we looked at the large number of variables that they had there, which were A, bad for you, and B, increased with age. And it was as simple as that. We said if those are things, if a health variable has the property of being bad for you and increasing with age, we'll count it. Otherwise, we won't. So a thing that we wouldn't count, for example, is left-handedness. Because even if it's bad for you, and as far as I know it's not, but even if it were, we wouldn't count it because it doesn't vary with age. In the same way, we don't count gray hair or even white hair, because as far as we know, it's not bad for you. In fact, arguably, it's kind of distinguished. It helps you out somewhat. So we don't count that either. But if something is bad for you and it increases with age, then we count it. Then we divide by the number of things that we counted in either the healthcare database we have, the health record, the epidemiological file. And that is how we get a frailty index. So you know that if we had, say, 50 things and someone had 10 things wrong with them, we'd take 10 divided by 50, that would be a frailty index score of 0.2. If they had nothing wrong with them, then we'd have 0 divided by 50, that would be a frailty index score of 0. If they had everything wrong with them they could possibly have, you might think, well, that would be 50 divided by 50, which would be 1. But remarkably, and this is a key point, it's not. The maximum value of the frailty index is 0.7. That's been shown in millions of people around the world. So that's telling us there's something intriguing going on from the system standpoint about how frailty works. So you can't have everything wrong with you, and that's why, because you'll die short of that, and that's why there's a limit to the frailty index. And there's a similar limit in mice, although it's not quite as high as 0.7, it comes out somewhere around 0.55, because at about that point, the veterinarians say you have to stop now with that animal. So when you take this as a frailty index, all of the variables accumulate at a characteristic rate, around 4.5% per year. If you're into investments, you'll know that's a doubling time about every 15 years. And it's variable. It's variable across the life course. So, do you have a pointer? I didn't plan well enough to have a pointer or make the little machine go around the arrow work. Thank you. Thank you. So, whoops. There we go. So here it's increasing 4.5% per year, but look is very variable. And this is where frailty arises. There's variability in the rate at which people have things wrong with them, or mice have things wrong with them. But the more things they have wrong with them, the more likely they are to die in a way that's very easy to understand and structured. So the more deficits, the greater the frailty. And usually what goes with this is the greater the social vulnerability as well. I'm not going to talk a lot about that today, but we have to acknowledge what happens inside the individual is a reflection of what happens outside them and what happened outside their parents as well. And worse frailty means a greater risk of death, but also with respect to acute illness, a longer hospital stay, a greater likelihood to go into long-term care, and a greater chance that how that illness presents will not look like it presents when it's only there on its own. And that's one of the big challenges in healthcare of people who are acutely ill. Because for the most part, we've organized healthcare not along the lines of someone with many things wrong, even though they're a very important part. In fact, in most of the hospitals, a majority part of the patients that we serve, but because we've had such success in looking after people with one thing wrong at a time that we've gotten used to the idea that's how it should be. And now that we're confronting many, many people with many things wrong all at once, we don't say, how was I trained so badly that I don't know how to look after this person? We say, this person shouldn't be here. They should be moved away some other place. We also tend to blame their families. Oh, this person can't cope, or the family can't cope. And we've got to get over that. These are the good old days right now, what we're in. We haven't seen anything yet. What we're seeing right now are the parents of the baby boomers who are coming in ill. Wait till we, the baby boomers, show up till you want to see people who you'd want to blame. So the remarkable thing about the Frailty Index is that it doesn't much matter what you count, and this has been used in the UK, where it's now been adopted by the National Health Service, and now they have data on millions of people in terms of how their Frailty Index works there. So I want to draw to your attention here, on the x-axis is age, on the y-axis is survival up to 1,800 days, and this is a heat map, as you'll see. So green are people with very low Frailty Index scores, and it goes up to red, high Frailty Index scores. But the relationship with death is so strong that even with 1 million people, you can't draw solid lines there, because when people are much older, it's hard to find anyone with a Frailty Index even at 0.7. So you can see the remarkable consistency that we have here, that across the age range, the people who have the fewest things wrong have the longest survival. The people with the most things wrong have the shortest survival. And it happens in a way which is characteristic, a point to which I will return. And it's not just in the UK, various studies around the world, whether you count increments of the Frailty Index of 0.1 or 0.01, show that the more things you have wrong with you, the more likely you are to die, which is good to know, and good that it's not the other way on. So that's what I want to say so far, that there's a regularity to frailty. There is an appealing consistency to the way that frailty arises, and it arises in the context of aging. It's just that people don't all age at the same rates. So now I want to talk to you about what we know about how acute illness influences the trajectories of frailty. And I'm going to show you some of the more background about how orderly the transitions, how orderly the changes in the numbers are. And then I'm going to want to make the point that the prior information that we would get from a frailty assessment is going to be the most important thing that we can know with respect to acute illness. So if you look at individuals one at a time, you could be forgiven for thinking that it's all chaotic. Because these are data from the National Population Health Survey of Canada, and these are data on 6 successive 2-year interval interviews in which a frailty index was calculated on the same basis each time. Here's the average trend as it goes up with age. This is the frailty index. We just, for simplicity, have the number of deficits here. And so you can see that individual results are highly variable. Here's someone who starts off high, they go a bit low, they're close to the mean. Here's someone who's below the mean the entire time, even though it's increasing. Here's someone who has this up and down. Here's someone else with a big jump, and then we don't hear from them anymore. That's because they've died. On an individual basis, understanding how this change works looks very difficult. But it's when you simplify it as a function of the number of things people had wrong at baseline, we begin to see the patterns here. And so one of the patterns that we see, this is the state of people who had nothing wrong at baseline. So at their first 2-year follow-up, again, 40% of them still don't have anything wrong. But by the time you're 12 years out, only 10% of them don't have anything wrong, because on average, people accumulate deficits. Contrast this with what here with as few as 5 things wrong. So no one goes back to having nothing wrong. There is some degree of improvement. You can get fewer than 5 things wrong, but every one of these 2-year intervals, there are fewer people, because the mortality rate increases and the loss to follow-up increases with the more things people have wrong with them. So if we look over here, this is just how the mortality curves work for all of these number of things that people have wrong with them at baseline. So the relationship between death and the number of things people have wrong with them is both important, but it's also orderly. And it's the orderliness which helps us understand how frailty and indeed how aging then work. So we published those data, that work in 2012, and generally what we said was that puzzlingly to me, a clinician, we couldn't make it clear, we couldn't demonstrate how the prior state, the state prior to the one you had, would influence very much what the outcomes were. It seemed to have a determining influence the whole way through. And in statistical modeling, it was always the case that the most recent piece of information done at this interval, at a 2-year interval, it was always the case that the most recent piece of information gave you the most value and wiped out what had happened prior to that. But in just last year, again using data from the Electronic Health Frailty Index in the UK, now with vast numbers of people, and with measurements that can happen every few months, we start to understand a little bit better how this works. So they divided people there into those who had stable frailty. That was the reference group. That was 3/4 of the people. And they looked at the ones who were clearly frail, Frailty Index score of more than 0.25. And they contrasted then the people who were not stable, had a moderately increasing Frailty Index score, very moderate, less than 1 point per month. But they found that with this group, there's an odds ratio of 1.65 increase, so 65% more, but rapidly rising frailty, in which there's a 0.02 increase per month in the Frailty Index. And this happened with people who were had lower Frailty Index scores to start. That was a very poor combination. Many more of those people died. 180% more of those people died with that pattern. So what it looks like is this. There's the stable pattern, people over the age of 75. Here's the generally growing pattern. Here's the one that goes up very quickly. So there is some prior information. But if we start to look at how pragmatic this is, the specificity is very high, but the sensitivity is very poor. People die across the frailty course. Even joggers can be run over by a truck, as was my case in 2017. So fortunately, I didn't die. But that was a joke I've made for years and years, and I thought I should keep making it, even though it's happened to me now. But the positive predictive value of it is low. The negative predictive value is high. So if you don't have a lot of things wrong with you, you shouldn't die. Okay, I kind of get that, and I'm glad for it personally. But this isn't going to help us a lot from a clinical standpoint yet. I'm just going to pay attention to the time here. I'm going to skip over these next 3 slides, which are a bit more about a project we've got called the Physics of Frailty. If there's time, I'll come back to it at the end. But we are starting to know more and more about where the characteristicness of change in the Frailty Index comes from, and we're able to model it in a way that there's a lot of mathematics has been done in other areas we can bring to bear here. And I think that this is going to be worthwhile and ultimately should be useful clinically. Maybe we can have supervised artificial intelligence to show them a path to which this might conform. So, but it is clinically the case that there's clinical value to the prior information. So knowing what someone was like before they were sick is extremely important, and that's what I want to spend the last 25 minutes or so on, because this is where we're making a lot of mistakes at present in the everyday management of people who are frail. And this is where we can make very big gains by simply thinking a bit differently about what happens when a frail older person becomes acutely ill. So we have to start with some terminology to be clear. I'm going to be talking about frailty screening and frailty assessment. Both are important, but the screening is important because it should precipitate the need for an assessment. How this will be implemented, where in general we have so few geriatricians, many more in Quebec than elsewhere, but in general we're going to have to figure out ways to geriatrize other specialties, to give them hints about how to do the bare bones of an assessment. So for a screening test, it needs to be rapid, has to be easy to use, has to be valid and reliable, but mostly it's got to be sensitive. You don't want to miss people out. Whereas for the frailty assessment, it too needs to be valid and reliable and easy-ish to use. You don't have quite the same time constraint, but it's not an infinite amount of time. But it needs to be highly specific. And so we'll talk about those in turn. Now, I'm aware there's tons of tools that are used to screen for frailty in the emergency department. And as long as they lead to an assessment, it's fine. And as long as they do it in a way that's sensitive, it's fine. And people should choose whatever they have based on local practice, custom, whoever won the fight. This is the one that we use, the clinical frailty scale. It's the one that's used in many parts of the world, including in England. Does anyone here, there are some people who look like they'd be old enough to know the band Cheap Trick? Anyone? Yeah, do you remember that I Want You to Want Me? They were big in Asia. They were big here for a few years, and they were big in Asia for 20 years after. So I'm like the band Cheap Trick. I'm big in Asia. So this has been translated into several Asian languages and is used in virtue somewhat of the picture. So it screens for frailty, but it does something that's very useful that we need to keep at the top of our minds. It grades by the degree of frailty. And the screening is done not on what the person looks like when the emergency department at the time, because they all look about the same, right? All old people in the emergency department are sick, look about the same. They're lying on a stretcher, they got the bad Johnny shirt on, they got the bad hair, they look kind of unhappy, and that doesn't help us understand what they're actually like. You got to find out what they're like 2 weeks ago. And though this seems like such common sense, I promise you it's not done. Unless you oblige people to ask about what this person was like, they assume the person in front of them is like they always are. And we miss so much information as a consequence of that. And that is, I think, the secret to what we need to do. I'm hoping I can make the mathematics complicated enough that it becomes respectable. Because otherwise we have the burden of common sense. People say, what did that guy say? He said you should find out what someone was like before they get sick. We all know that. But it turns out even if we know it, we don't do it. So we have to have a way that obliges people to think about this. There are various triage systems that are around. There's a Canadian one called STS. There's this one in the UK called Muse. I have a lot more data on the medical early warning system in the UK. And what this does is to look at the clinical frailty scale categories and how big the risk is. And this is for people who are frail and not frail, and then this is the categories of increasing risk based on the medical early warning. So you can see that having the medical early warning signs having a lot of them gives a bigger mortality rate than having a few of them, but very, very, very much more in people who are frail. So both of these things turn out to be important. And this gives rise to, as we start to understand this as a complex system coming close to failure, that a lot of things we see in everyday geriatrics make sense. So in everyday geriatrics, we know that when people are ill, they will not be ill in the same way. They won't look the same, they won't behave the same, they won't ask the same, they won't move the same as well people who are suddenly ill. So in geriatrics for years and years and years, we've called this the atypical disease presentations. So the typical way to present with a heart attack is, doctor, I have crushing retrosternal chest pain. It radiates down my left arm and it gives me a feeling of impending doom. In fact, yes, I am short of breath and I am sitting bolt upright in bed. And please check the vein in my neck. You'll see how high it is. That's the way that most heart attacks happen. If you watch TV for 10 minutes, you know that that's a heart attack, right? But if you have someone who comes in and they're confused and they're walking around, they're a little bit agitated and they're kind of peeing over in the corner, to figure they've got a heart attack, that's a much more intellectually satisfying thing to do, I would think. And so what we need is to understand that things like delirium, the confusion, or functional decline, or falling or taking to bed, or even peeing in the corner, these are frailty syndromes. These are syndromes of illness, of acute illness in people who are frail. And they exist in that way, not because, as I was taught, they're sensitive and non-specific signs of illness, because I'm an internist. Everything is a sensitive but non-specific sign of illness to me, right? Someone comes in with chest pain, I can give you 50 causes of that if I think about it. You know, they've got red skin, there's must be 50 more, which I can't think about because I don't think about what happens outside of the body. Shortness of breath, diarrhea, there's tons of causes of all these things. It's not the sensitive but not specific. It's that these things are signs that the system as a whole is failing. As humans, we have evolved to have upright bipedal ambulation. We have evolved to have divided attention. We've evolved to have opposable thumbs. We've evolved to have social engagement. So when these things start to fail, the failure of divided attention is delirium or boredom. The failure of opposable thumbs is functional decline. The failure of being upright and walking around is falling and taking to bed. That's why these are the important signs of illness in frail older adults. We've all known that, but we haven't taken some of the next steps to understand how to deal with that better in an ordinary way outside of a geriatric ward. And that is what the trick is. So as we thought about complex systems close to failure, we paid attention to how old people move in bed when they are ill. And we particularly paid attention to what happens to them in the first 48 hours. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one is there's a well-known property of a complex system, which is that if you start to fix it and you fix it quickly, it'll be fixed better longer. But if you're 6 weeks in still taking it apart, the chance you'll ever fix it properly and it will stay that way is much smaller. And it works the same way for people too. So we looked at first we looked at how people moved in bed when they're ill, and then we looked at how that changed. So how people move in bed when they're ill is very straightforward. If someone is as sick as they can be, they'll lie flat on their back, and they can't even guard their airway. And there's clinical things we have to do for that person. Most of them involve Teflon. We have to put a tube down their throat. We have to put an IV in their veins. We probably have to put a catheter in. Even a geriatrician would agree to that in the first 40 hours if someone can't move. As they start to move, they move off their pressure points. They also have to be turned every 2 hours. As they start to move off their pressure points, they can almost always guard their airway at that point in the ordinary course of illness. And as they get better, and you try and listen to their lungs, listen to their chest to see how they are, and you ask them to sit up, then generally what they can do is they can take their arm and move it across the bed to hold on to the bed rail. And they can start to pull, and then they can push. And ultimately they can push and swing their legs over the side of the bed. These things are very easy to see. They're too easy to see. But they have a huge amount of information in them. And they allow us to understand, if we grade that, whether someone's going to live or not. So look, here are data from the hospital where I work. We did this on 480 people. This is what happens. This is the mortality. This is the chance to get back to your prior state if the mobility imbalance got worse in the first 48 hours. So if someone could go grab the bed rail and then they could only put their arm across their chest, that amount of decline was enough to give them a very poor outcome. And here was the one if people remain the same, and here was the recovery back if they improved in the first 48 hours. And the reason that this is important is because at present, one of the issues we have with frailty is people see patients who are frail and they equate that with them dying. They equate that with the need for palliative care. But that's not true. Most people who are frail and acutely ill will live. But if we miss the opportunity to treat them aggressively and give them rehabilitation and mobilize them and treat their pain and treat their other common issues that they have, feed them and those sorts of things, if we miss that, they might not die, but they'll have a much higher chance to go to long-term care. So that's why it's really important that we pay attention to what happens in the first 48 hours. Because there's this idea about palliation, then sometimes what happens is we plan for this person to die, and then after a few days it's clear that they're not. And then what do? We have to have a clear-eyed understanding, and we have to get away from the false dichotomy that people who are frail must be dying. Some of them will, but for the most part, they will be the very severely frail people at the start. These are pragmatic clinical consequences that oblige us to know about how frailty works if we're going to deal with acutely ill older people in any setting. In the emergency department, in cardiology, in gen surg, anywhere we need to be able to have these skills. These can't be the secrets of the geriatrician. Where I work, we're so old-fashioned, we're so out of touch, we still use paper forms. I've made that wee joke in many American audiences where they have electronic health records, and people always say, you know, I wouldn't give up those paper forms in a hurry if I were you. So this is a comprehensive geriatric assessment that we do at the hospital where I am, and it's in this form. I'm just showing this to you right now to show you that it all fits on one page. The bottom of the page are things that people in healthcare do really well. We're really good to write down diagnoses that have appeared in the chart previously. Whether they're true or not, we'll write them all down. And we're very good at recording all the medications that someone is on. And we've set up the form in this way so you can tell at a glance how frail someone is or not. So your first hint will be, if you find that these 12 or 13 lines are filled out, and there's things written down here on the side, these things start to go up on the top, and then the meds do the same thing, you got a pretty good chance that that person is frail. And for the rest of the form, you've seen that these blocks, there's the baseline, what they're like 2 weeks ago, there's the current, what they're like today. Here's the section which is for their instrumental activities of daily living. This is independence, assistance, dependence 2 weeks ago, independence, assistance, dependence now, and the patterns start to emerge from this. So here's the pattern of someone who's really severely ill. They were independent 2 weeks ago, they're dependent on everything now. No one ages that quickly, they're sick. And part of the reason we tried to promote it in this way is because medical students get really, really frustrated because we continue to teach them as though all the patients they will see will only have one thing wrong with them. And then it turns out people show up with a bunch of things wrong and they get frustrated. And again, they don't say, you've got to teach me better. They say, these people shouldn't be here because they're nothing like the people in the books who are one they should be looking after. But the other important thing is that if we know what the baseline state is, we can set goals. We can set the goals that we need to achieve for this person to go home. If this person's come in independent in everything 2 weeks ago, the expectation is going to be that they should be independent before they go home. So we can't have this thing which still happens where people say, look, your chest x-ray is a whole lot better, you should go now. But they've been tied up or they've been in bed or no one has mobilized them or no one's treated their pain or no one has fed them or no one has looked after their fluid. Well, they looked after their fluids because there's electrolytes done every day, and the nurses will know that if the sodium is up, then they'll need more fluid. But it's amazing how haphazard the ordinary care is with respect to this. So if you make this detailed inquiry, we can start to set goals, and people themselves can see how much closer they are to achieving their goal. And therefore, that motivates people actually to get better quicker. I'm going to skip over this too. So the whole point to do the geriatric assessment is to set the baseline goals. And the way we do this starts with understanding what someone was like at baseline and then understanding what it is they want. And under this comes the care plan. Assessment is meant to get to a care plan. Assessment is meant to achieve patient-centered goals. Assessment is not an administrative function. Assessment is the opening stage by which we implement the care plan. We have to know where we're going if we're going to get there. And we also have to use the best information available. So I've given this talk in places, this part of the talk in places where there's this very big, strong sense that we can't do things unless we understand what the person wants, which is true. But there's the understanding that whatever they say is what they want, which is manifestly not true when someone is delirious or when they have dementia, when they imagine they're still driving and swimming and jumping up and down. They haven't done that for 2 years. You have to set goals based on what the best information you can get is and not what the client says. The other thing we need to understand to implement care plans is that these are negotiations. We may think that the person should be able to do X and Y and Z, and they may say, yeah, I want to do it, but the caregiver daughter says, well, that's fine for him, but do you know I have a disabled daughter at home? And do you know that right now your whole plan depends on him being able to walk upstairs, but he can't walk upstairs, but I can't change the main floor to have him stay downstairs for the next 6 weeks. It's a negotiation. We have to figure out what everybody's needs are, and we have to try our best to see what's achievable. And because of that, it requires judgment. And some people will be better at it than others will. And that's death from an administrative standpoint, because you want to try and deliver the same product all the time. But the reality is that that's going to be hard to do. So instead of trying to standardize everything, get every piece of information the same way and everybody all the time, you have to have a remedy. That if you run into difficulty, if you run into problems with the negotiation, you have a way to deal with that, which is routine. It may involve someone else coming in to help out. But that will get you much further than trying to standardize everything all the time in the idea that this will make it all objective. That's not going to happen. And because we have processes of care, then we have to build in processes for the reconciliation when the judgments differ. So, I'm coming to sum up. So I said there were 3 objectives, and the first thing was to say to you how frailty relates to aging. And I skipped over, but sort of said in words, the point that frailty as a statistical concept is variability in the risk of death or variability in the risk of an adverse outcome for people the same age or people the same exposure. And the way that we've resolved the understanding of frailty in humans is that the variability in the risk of the adverse outcomes is a function of the number of things that people have wrong with them. As a first proposition, the more things they have wrong with them, the more likely they are to have the adverse outcome, whichever one we're interested in. So it's important that we have an organized way to screen for and then count the number of things that people have wrong with them. And this can be done in an automated way, as being done in the UK. It's then have to be, at that point, still passed through judgment. Not everybody with a frailty index of 0.35 is going to look the same if it was generated on an automatic basis. If frailty is variability in the risk of an adverse outcome for people with the same exposure, what's variability in the risk of an adverse outcome for people with the same frailty index? That's not going to be meta-frailty. That means we have to look outside the frailty index to other things that are happening in the environment, like the social vulnerability of the individual, or the extent to which they engage in health practices, or the extent to which they're flocculated, they're cocooned, there are people at home who are looking after everything to make sure that they don't fall. All these things will wind up being important. But as a first approximation, we have to know what things people have wrong with them, and we have to design care plans around that. How acute illness influences the trajectory of frailty is turning to be surprisingly tricky to quantify. And we have, in my view, is we're way past beyond when we can do all this with words. We have to make this quantifiable, and we have to do it in a way that has fidelity to the complex phenomena that we see. And I'm certain as a clinician that prior information is important, but it's been surprisingly tricky to demonstrate this in the reliable way that it needs to be for us to make progress with it. And that's why I put the discussion about screening assessment in the notion of prior information. So I think it is possible for us to harvest the prior information that goes into the care plan in an ordered way. And I think it's going to involve a step with that will be very much dependent upon the initial response to treatment done in a routine way. No one does work like this on their own. I've been really fortunate over my career to have the support of a large number of people and a large number of organizations, including, of course, the CIHR. I thank all of those people for their support, and I thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
So, oui, nous avons un peu de temps pour quelques questions. Elles peuvent être posées en français au début et il pourra répondre en anglais ou vice-versa en anglais à vous. Donc la salle est à vous. Nous avons encore un peu de temps avant la pause qui sera écourtée de 10 minutes au lieu de 20 pour essayer de rattraper le tout et donc arriver à manger à l'heure et que nous ne soyons pas en hypoglycémie. Y a-t-il des questions dans l'audience? Oui, monsieur.
Dans l'évaluation de vos tests, vous avez mentionné une qualité qui était la spécificité. Mais j'ai pas vu reproducibilité. Est-ce que c'est...
So we've looked at the reproducibility or the reliability. So in a few studies, the good news is that the reliability amongst geriatricians is quite high. The more concerning news is that when you have groups, the reliability, I'm speaking first of the clinical frailty scale. Frailty assessments are by their nature much more reliable because they depend on many more sources of information which gets multiply verified. So the clinical frailty scale has been studied many times in the UK. It generally has acceptable reliability, but not perfect. But there are a few studies which show that emergency doctors in the UK tend to rate everybody as either a 4 on the scale, so as somewhat vulnerable, or mildly frail. And that's kind of their default stance. And it's not clear. There's been some qualitative studies done now to understand why things are moved that way. And it's because in their minds they have something, in their minds they equate being frail at all with being severely frail. So if they think the person is frail, they'll score them as mildly frail. And if they think they're not quite there, they'll score them as not quite mildly frail. But all old people kind of look the same to them. So we know that is a challenge about how to get people to take a history of what someone was like 2 weeks ago. And the group in the UK is working on that very much. The other thing, and I've just seen 2 studies now with this, nurses tend to be much more optimistic about people up to a frailty score of 5. But after that, they tend to be more pessimistic. So there's a problem around the grades of frailty between moderately frail, severely frail, and very severely frail. And that's important too. And it seems to be in terms of how they gather their information. Now, sometimes they're uncovering more frailty there than people were aware of. But this is an active area of inquiry now to get the screening to work. Again, the part with the nurses is much less worrisome because they clearly have got the sensitivity issue down, and that's what we want. We want to make sure we don't miss people who are frail. What's happening with the emerge docs is a bit more concerning because people are slipping through who are they're missing some people who are frail because their default is to call them the stage just prior to that. So this is a big issue. It happens whenever we have a judgment-based technique. Either group will identify people who are at an increased risk, but it's work that needs to be done still. Thank you for that question.
Nous avons le temps pour une dernière question.
Okay. My question is you define frailty in 2 ways. First, the likelihood of dying, and then the accumulation of deficits.
Yes.
So my question is, what is the inherent fundamental aspect of frailty in that if you were to treat those deficits, would these people who are frail, are not frail anymore, the basics of deficits, remain frail, that is more likely to, for example, get more deficits or die? Or
So the question was if there are two definitions of frailty, the statistical one, which I didn't invent, that was done by Vopel and colleagues in 1979, the year after I did my first study on frailty, actually. And then there's the other way about the accumulation of deficits. Do they come together? So if you treat frailty deficits, will that lower the risk of death? And will it lower the risk of other adverse outcomes? And the encouraging sense of it is that yes, it does. So we know this. The strongest information we have is from controlled trials, where the intervention group was able to reduce their frailty index score, and with that, more of them achieved the better outcome. We also know from the data from the National Population Health Survey that if people improve their frailty index score between, say, interview 1 and interview 2, the mortality rate for interview 3 will be reflected by what happened in interview 2 without any information being carried over from interview 1. So as these are probabilities, of course, but the probability is that if you can improve the degree of frailty, and that's why we must speak about degrees, not frail, non-frail. We have to speak about degrees of frailty. If you can improve the degree of frailty, there will be a mortality benefit with it, and it looks like there will be a benefit in terms of function and entry into long-term care.
Est-ce que nous avons une dernière question? Oui, Marie-Jeanne.
Jen, are you better than us? Do you invite the patient and the caregiver in interdisciplinary meeting to do the care plan?
Yeah, so we do. So the question was, do we invite the patients and the caregivers into the care planning exercise? And yes, we do. So here's the footnote, right? The final iteration of the care plan is made at the multidisciplinary team meeting, but that is then followed by a family conference, and nothing is presented at the family conference that they haven't heard of before. So each group that's bringing in how the care plan looks like it will work to the multidisciplinary team meeting is doing it based on their conversation with the patient. So we're very focused on this. We're very focused, as you probably know, on goal setting, that people have to set a goal, and that goal needs to be negotiated. And so we have the initial one, which is done with the nurse or the physio or the doctor. The team meets and figures out what's feasible, and then the product of that gets sorted out at the family meeting. And that would be routine for everybody. That's what you do too. Fantastic.
Merci, Dr. Rockwood, pour cette excellente présentation sur la fragilité, le besoin de l'intégrer dans le soin et dans le système de soins. Nous vous remercions pour votre temps. Nous vous invitons maintenant à la pause et je vous donne rendez-vous à 10h25 au sein de l'amphithéâtre, donc dans 10 minutes. Merci à vous tous.